In this video I'm going to go over a couple of tips for encountering wildlife when you're on a hike in South Africa. One of the most important things that you should keep in mind when doing any hike is to always be very aware of your surroundings. So don't put in earphones and listen to music or look at your phone. Look at what's going on around you, listen to what's going on around you, be aware of your surroundings. When people think of wildlife on a hike, they usually think of lions or elephants or big game. But truthfully, most hiking trails have some wildlife on them, even if it's just a tiny snake or a couple of insects. If the nature reserve has dangerous game inside of it, so predators such as lions or other dangerous animals such as elephants or rhinos or hippopotamuses, Cape buffalo even, then you will not be allowed to hike there on your own without a guide because it's just too dangerous. But there are plenty of hiking trails that do have other kinds of game in them, and you can go and hike at those hiking trails on your own. When you're hiking in an area that does have wildlife, that is that wildlife's home. It's their own place. You're just visiting, so you do not have right of way. You should not try and chase animals out of your way or chivvy them off the path. If you happen to encounter wildlife, then you should stop and give them space to move out of the way, and if they don't want to move out of the way, then you need to back off and find a different route. It's extremely important not to try and feed any animals or try and get close to animals to try and take some sort of selfie for Instagram. You really need to remember that all wildlife, no matter how tame it might appear, is wild and it is unpredictable, and if you get into its face, it can really hurt you. Animals also make their own paths, which are probably going to be a little bit different from the hiking trails. So in an area that has wildlife, you might see paths that have no entry signs on them or that have been blocked off with rocks or sticks, and you should definitely not follow those tracks. Sometimes it can be a little bit difficult if you're not familiar with the hiking trail, but something that you can look for if you're on a trail and you're not quite sure if it's the hiking trail or if it's a game trail. If the path starts petering out and disappearing, you're probably on a game trail and you should backtrack. If you start encountering a lot of low-hanging branches that you have to duck underneath, then you're probably on a game trail. Paths that have benches on them or signposts or log steps built onto them are almost certainly the correct hiking path. Another really important thing that you want to remember is to try not to get in between animals. So if there's a whole herd of zebra and half of them on the one side of the path and the other half on the other side of the path, it might not be the best idea to walk through the middle. Animals that have babies with them are also generally a little bit more volatile than animals that don't. So if you see a very young animal, no matter how cute it might be, don't try and get up close to it because its mom might not like that very much. If you do want to see animals up close, then just get yourself a pair of binoculars or a camera that has a zoom lens, and then you can take nice pictures of the animals or watch them from a distance in safety. Wild animals are really beautiful, but they can also be pretty distracting. So I have seen several people get injuries not directly from the wildlife, but from looking at the wildlife and then tripping and falling on the hiking path. So if you're on a very technical area and you want to look at wildlife, maybe just stop and stand still while you're sightseeing because you don't want to fall over and hurt yourself. Let's talk about snakes for a second. This seems to be one of the things that people are the most fearful of when they're going hiking, but honestly, in my experience hiking, I have come across many snakes and I have never had any issues with them. A lot of snakes are completely harmless and don't need to be feared at all. I think one of the main dangers with snakes is that they might be fairly camouflaged, so it is possible to step on them or kick them without realizing that they're there. If you are feeling a bit fearful about snakes, then one of the best resources out there is the African Snakebite Institute. They have a ton of information about snakes in Africa, and they also have some online courses that are very, very inexpensive and teach you quite a lot about how to identify different snakes. On any hiking trail, you should be trying not to disturb the peace too much, particularly because that is the home of the wildlife that lives there, and you don't want to disturb birds' nesting sites or shy animals. But on the other hand, if you are having an encounter with an animal that is going a bit wrong, then you should try to make some noise, make yourself look big. But in general, try not to disturb the wildlife at all if you can help it. An important thing to remember is that wildlife is all very different. So a Cape buffalo is going to react very, very differently to, say, an impala. But even within a species, individual impalas are going to react differently as well. Different animals learn different behaviors, which is why it's really important not to feed wild animals, because then they lose their fear of humans and start becoming a bit of a menace. You do have to take every single wildlife encounter on an individual basis and deal with it as you see fit at the time. If you're not exactly sure how an animal is going to react, perhaps you've never come across that particular animal before, then rather err on the side of caution and be a little bit overly paranoid, give the animal lots and lots of space rather than assuming that it's going to be fine to walk straight past it. If you have your own tips for how to handle the wildlife in your area, then please leave them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, then you might want to subscribe to my channel to see videos that I'm going to make in the future, or if you'd like to see more videos from me, you can click on my channel name to see videos that I've made in the past.